The ground shook again as another plasma bomb hit the surface above their heads. Dust fell from the ceiling of the underground bunker, where 300 people from different alien worlds huddled together in fear. They had been hiding like this for 3 months now, and everyone knew their time was running out. Hyunwoo wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked on the broken communication device. His blue fingers moved quickly over the alien circuits, trying to fix what the Vorthak bombs had destroyed. He was from a world called Kepler 442b, but it wasn't really his home planet. Like most people here, he was a refugee who had come looking for a new life. "Any luck with that thing?" asked Mi Young as she sat down beside him. She was the unofficial leader of their small colony. Before the attack, she had been working as an engineer, helping to make their new world suitable for living. Now she spent her days trying to keep everyone alive and hopeful. "Maybe," Hyunwoo said, not looking up from his work. "I think I can get one more message out, but after that, this thing is finished." Mi Young nodded. They both knew what that meant. Once their communication device died, they would be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The Vorthak. Ships in orbit would eventually break through their defenses, and then it would be over. Everyone here would become slaves, forced to work in the Vorthak mines until they died. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as the worst kind of enemy. They didn't just kill people or take over planets, they captured entire populations and turned them into workers who had no freedom, no hope, and no future. Millions of beings across dozens of worlds lived as Vorthak slaves, and no one had ever managed to stop them. "What should the message say?" Hyunwoo asked. Mi Young thought for a moment. They had already sent requests for help to every major power in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had said the situation was under review, which everyone knew meant they weren't going to do anything. The Altarian Federation claimed that Kepler 442b was outside their territory, so they couldn't help. Even the mighty Zenthari Empire, with their huge fleets and powerful weapons, had stayed silent. "Keep it simple," Mi Young finally said. "Tell them we're dying. Tell them the Vorthak want to make us slaves. Ask if anyone out there can help us." Hyunwoo began typing the message into the device. His hands were shaking a little, but he managed to get the words right. As he worked, other people in the bunker gathered around them. There was Kato, a tall, green alien from a farming world. There was Zen, whose people had skin like tree bark and who never needed to sleep. There was little Pip, who looked like a cross between a cat and a bird, and whose entire family had been killed in the first attack. All of them had come to Kepler 442b looking for peace. The planet had good soil, clean water, and a government that didn't care what species you were, as long as you worked hard and followed the law. For a few years, it had been everything they had hoped for. Different kinds of people from across. The galaxy had built homes together, shared their cultures, and created something beautiful. Then the Vorthak had arrived. "Message is ready," Hyunwoo announced. "Should I send it on all frequencies?" "Yes," Mi Young said. "Send it everywhere. Maybe someone will hear it." Hyunwoo pressed the final button and the message shot out into space. It would travel faster than light, reaching distant star systems in hours or days. But would anyone who received it care enough to help? Above them, another explosion shook the bunker. Pieces of rock fell from the ceiling, and someone started crying. Mi Young stood up and looked around at all the frightened faces staring back at her. "Listen to me," she said in a loud, clear voice. "We've done everything we can to call for help. Now we have to do everything we can to help ourselves. The Vorthak think we're weak because we're refugees, because we come from different worlds, because we don't have a big army. They're wrong." She walked around the bunker as she spoke, making eye contact with as many people as possible. "We built this colony together. We made farms work on ground that had never grown food before. We created homes, schools, and hospitals. We did all of that while learning each other's languages and customs. If we can do that, we can fight." Kato stood up first. "What do you want us to do?" We make weapons from our mining equipment, Mi-young said. We set traps in the tunnels. We make the Vorthak pay for every step they take on our world. Maybe we can't win, but we can show them that free people don't give up easily. Old Zen, who had lived through 3 wars on his home planet, nodded slowly. The young human speaks wisdom. It is better to die fighting than to live as slaves. Wait, human? Mi-young looked at him in confusion. I'm not human, Zen. I'm Corvani. Ah, Zen said, looking embarrassed. Forgive me. Your species and the humans look very similar. I have only seen humans in old galactic databases, and the information said they were a primitive species with no space travel. Mi-young had heard of humans before, but like most people in the galaxy, she didn't know much about them. Their world was called Earth, and it was supposed to be a backward planet somewhere in the outer rim. The few reports about them suggested they were still fighting wars with chemical explosives and had never developed faster-than-light travel. Doesn't matter what I am, Mi-young said. What matters is that we stick together. For the next few hours, everyone worked to prepare their defenses. They turned mining lasers into weapons and dug new tunnels that could be used for surprise attacks. It wasn't much, but it was something. As Hyunwoo helped carry supplies, he couldn't stop thinking about their message. Somewhere out in the vast galaxy, their call for help was traveling between the stars. But space was huge, and most civilizations had their own problems. Who would risk their ships and their people to save a bunch of refugees they had never met? He looked up at the ceiling of the bunker, imagining the dark space above their planet where the Vorthak fleet waited like hungry predators. Tomorrow, or maybe the day after, those ships would come down. When they did, the people of Kepler 442b would fight with everything they had. But deep in his heart, Hyunwoo didn't think it would be enough. Admiral Jin-ho Park stood in the main control room of Luna Station, staring at the holographic display that showed a message from deep space. The room was quiet, except for the soft humming of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring equipment. Outside the large windows, Earth hung in space like a blue and white jewel, looking peaceful and beautiful. But Jin-ho knew that looks could be deceiving. Earth looked peaceful, but it was actually one of the most heavily defended worlds in the galaxy. The difference was that no one else knew it. Play the message again, Jin-ho said to Lieutenant So-min Lee, who was working at a nearby computer station. So-min pressed a few buttons, and the alien voice filled the room once more. The words were translated into Korean by Earth's advanced computers, but Jin-ho could hear the fear and desperation in the original language. We are dying. They want to make us slaves. If anyone can hear this, please help us. The message was simple, but it told a story that Jin-ho had heard too many times before. Somewhere in the galaxy, innocent people were suffering while the major powers did nothing. The Galactic Council would hold meetings and make speeches, but they wouldn't send ships. The big empires would claim it wasn't their problem. And the Vorthak would add another world to their collection of slave planets. What do we know about the source? Jin-ho asked. So-min pulled up another display. The signal came from Kepler 442b, about 47 light-years from here. Our deep space monitors picked it up 6 hours ago. According to our intelligence files, it's a small colony world with a mixed population of refugees from various species. Jin-ho nodded. For the past 200 years, Earth had been secretly watching the galaxy. They had placed hidden monitoring stations throughout space, intercepted communications from dozens of civilizations, and learned everything they could about galactic politics and technology. The official record said that Earth was a primitive world whose people had never developed space travel. Those records were wrong. The truth was that humans had been traveling between stars for centuries. But they had done it quietly, carefully, always staying hidden. Earth's leaders had decided long ago that it was better to watch and learn than to rush into galactic politics unprepared. They had seen what happened to species that revealed themselves too early. Some were conquered, others were ignored, and, A few were used as pawns in games played by older, more powerful civilizations. But now, 2 centuries of preparation might finally be worth something. "Sir," So-min said, "we're getting a transmission from Captain Dong-hyun." The air above So-min's computer shimmered, and suddenly Captain Dong-hyun Kim appeared as a life-size hologram. He was standing on the bridge of his ship somewhere deep in space. Behind him, Jin-ho could see his crew working at their stations. "Admiral," Dong-hyun said with a small bow, "I'm transmitting from the Kepler system. My reconnaissance team has been observing the situation for the past 4 hours." "What's your assessment?" Jin-ho asked. 57 Vorthak ships in orbit. Around the planet," Dong-hyun reported. "Standard siege formation. They're bombing the surface regularly, but they haven't started their ground invasion yet. My guess is they're trying to break the colonists' will before sending troops down." Jin-ho felt anger building in his chest. The Vorthak were cowards who preferred to attack defenseless colonies rather than fight real battles against prepared enemies. They had been doing this for decades, and the galaxy had let them get away with it because stopping them would require real effort and real risk. "How many people are down there?" Jin-ho asked. "Maybe 50,000 total," Dong-hyun said. "Men, women, children from at least 20 different species. Intel suggests they have basic defensive weapons, but nothing that could seriously threaten a Vorthak assault force. Time until invasion? Hard to say. Could be days, could be hours. The Vorthak commander seems to be enjoying the psychological warfare." Jin-ho was quiet for a moment, thinking. Around him, the control room staff continued their work, but he could feel them listening. Everyone knew this moment might come eventually. Earth had spent 2 centuries preparing for the day when they would step out of the shadows and take their place in galactic civilization. The question was whether that day had finally arrived. "Sir," So-min said quietly, "the Joint Chiefs are requesting an immediate conference." Jin-ho nodded. "Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. And So-min, start preparing Operation Starfall, briefing materials." Min's eyes widened slightly. Operation Starfall was Earth's plan for revealing themselves to the galaxy. It had been developed and refined for decades, but no one had ever expected it to be used for a rescue mission. Jin-ho walked through the corridors of Luna Station toward the secure conference room. As he moved, he passed windows that showed Earth below and the moon's surface outside. Somewhere in the distance, he knew, Earth's fleet was waiting. 30 of the most advanced warships ever built, each one invisible to conventional sensors, each one capable of fighting entire enemy fleets. The conference room was already occupied when Jin-ho arrived. General Woo-jin Martinez, head of Earth's ground forces, sat at one end of the table. Admiral Hee-jin Chen, commander of the Pacific Fleet, was participating by hologram from her flagship. Dr. Jae-sung Thompson, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, had brought a stack of files that probably contained more information about the Vorthak than the Vorthak knew about themselves. "Gentlemen, lady," Jin-ho said as he took his seat, "I assume you've all reviewed the situation at Kepler 442b. "We have," General Woo-jin said. "The question is whether we're ready to reveal ourselves for the sake of one small colony." "It's not just about one colony," Dr. Jae-sung said, looking up from his files. "The Vorthak have been expanding their slave operation for years. They now control 17 star systems and have enslaved over 200 million beings. If we don't stop them now, they'll keep growing until they become unstoppable." Admiral Hai-jin's hologram leaned forward. "My ships are ready. The crews have been training for this kind of operation for years. But once we attack, there's no going back. The galaxy will know that humans exist, and they'll want to know where we came from and what we want." "What do we want?" Jin-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. "We want to build a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them," General Woo-jin said. "We want to create a civilization where species can develop freely without fear of conquest or enslavement." We want to prove that there's a better way. Jinho stood up and walked to the large window that dominated one wall of the conference room. Earth filled most of the view, its blue oceans and white clouds making it look like a paradise. But Jinho knew that Earth's history was full of violence, war, and suffering. Humans had spent thousands of years learning hard lessons about power, justice, and responsibility. Maybe it was time to share those lessons with the galaxy. Activate operation. Starfall, Jinho said without turning around. Send the fleet to Kepler 442b. Show the galaxy what Earth can do. Fleet Commander Threxmach stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet below through the large viewing screen. Kepler 442b looked peaceful from orbit, but he knew that beneath the clouds, thousands of future slaves were hiding in underground bunkers. Soon those bunkers would be opened, and the Vorthak Empire would gain another valuable source of workers. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting some unusual readings on the long-range scanners." Threxmach turned toward the sensor station. He was a large creature with gray skin and red eyes, wearing the black uniform that marked him as a senior commander in the Vorthak fleet. "What kind of readings?" "Ships, sir. But they keep appearing and disappearing. The computer says there's nothing there, but then I see contacts for a few seconds before they vanish again. Probably interference from the planet's magnetic field," Threxmach said dismissively. "Or maybe your equipment needs to be replaced. When we return to base, I'll have you assigned to a mining ship where you can learn to do your job properly." The sensor officer looked nervous and turned back to his station. But the strange readings continued to appear on his screen, and each time they seemed to be getting closer. Far above the Vorthak fleet, Chief Specialist Tae-Ho watched the enemy ships through his own sensors. The UES Incheon hung motionless in space, completely invisible to the aliens below. Around it, 29 other human ships waited in perfect formation, their advanced cloaking systems bending light around their hulls. "Cloak is holding steady, Captain," Tae-Ho reported to Captain Yoonji Choi. "The Vorthak sensors are trying to lock onto us, but their technology is about 50 years behind ours." Captain Yoonji smiled as she looked at the tactical display that showed the positions of all human ships. Each one was commanded by an officer who had trained for years for this exact mission. They had studied Vorthak tactics, learned Vorthak weaknesses, and prepared for every possible situation. "All ships, this is the Incheon," Yoonji said into her communication system. "Report status." One by one, the fleet commanders responded. Captain Jae Sung on the UES Busan reported that his weapons were charged and ready. Captain Ha Na on the UES Seoul confirmed that her Marines were prepared for boarding operations. Captain Woo Jin on the UES Daegu announced that his electronic warfare systems were already penetrating Vorthak communications. Each ship in the human fleet was more advanced than anything the Vorthak had ever seen. While most galactic civilizations built large, heavily armored vessels that relied on energy shields and plasma weapons, humans had taken a different approach. Their ships were smaller, faster, and much harder to detect. Instead of energy weapons, they used kinetic projectiles that could punch through the strongest armor. And hidden in their missile bays were weapons that no galactic civilization had ever used in space combat: nuclear warheads. "Admiral Park sends his compliments," reported Lieutenant Yu Jin from the communication station. "Operation Starfall is authorized to proceed on your command." Yoonji looked at the Vorthak fleet on her main screen. 57 ships arranged in a blockade formation around the planet. They were confident, relaxed, probably planning their victory celebrations. They had no idea that they were about to face the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "Tactical, what's your analysis?" Yoonji asked. Commander Byung-ho, the ship's tactical officer, brought up a detailed display of the enemy formation. "Standard Vorthak siege deployment, Captain. Their heavy cruisers are positioned to prevent escape from the planet, while their destroyers patrol the outer perimeter. They're not expecting an attack from outside the system." Weaknesses. Several. Their formation is designed to contain refugees, not fight a real battle. Their heavy ships are clustered too close together, making them vulnerable to area effect weapons. And their patrol routes are predictable. We can position ourselves to attack their weak points. Unji nodded. The Vorthak were bullies who specialized in attacking defenseless targets. They had probably never faced an enemy that could fight back effectively. All ships, she announced. Prepare for combat. Remember, we're not just fighting for the people on that planet. We're showing the galaxy what happens when someone threatens innocent lives while Earth is watching. On the UES Daegu, Captain Wu Jin was already working to disrupt the Vorthak communication systems. His ship specialized in electronic warfare, and its computers were far more advanced than anything the aliens had. Within minutes, he had accessed their command network and was listening to their conversations. They're planning to begin the final assault in 6 hours, he reported to the fleet. Ground troops are being prepared, and they're moving their troop ships into position. Captain Ha Na, whose ship carried a full battalion of human marines, checked her equipment one more time. If any Vorthak managed to reach the planet's surface, her people would be waiting for them. Human soldiers had trained in hundreds of different environments against dozens of different enemy types. The Vorthak might be used to fighting terrified refugees, but they had never faced Earth's military. Captain, Tejo called out from his sensor station. The Vorthak are starting to move their ships around. I think they're getting ready to start the invasion. Yunji looked at the tactical display and saw that he was right. The alien ships were slowly changing position, preparing to move into bombardment formation. Once they started their final attack, the people hiding on the planet below would have only hours to live. All ships drop cloak, Yunji ordered. Show them what Earth can do. Across the human fleet, cloaking systems deactivated. 30 human warships materialized out of empty space around the Vorthak formation, like wolves surrounding a flock of sheep. The alien sensors, which had been detecting nothing but empty space moments before, suddenly showed 30 unknown contacts, in perfect attack positions. On the Vorthak flagship, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The sensor officer, who had been detecting strange readings earlier, stared at his screen in shock. Where there had been nothing just seconds before, he now saw 30 ships that didn't match any known design in the galactic databases. "Sir," he called out, "unknown ships have appeared around our fleet. They're not showing any identification signals." Threxmach rushed to the sensor station and looked at the display himself. The unknown ships were sleek and angular, much smaller than Vorthak, vessels but positioned with military precision. They had appeared simultaneously from multiple directions, suggesting a level of coordination that impressed even him. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Demand identification." Before his communication officer could comply, a new voice filled the bridge. It spoke in perfect Vorthak, but the accent was unlike anything any of them had heard before. "Attention, Vorthak Fleet. This is Captain Yunji Choi of the United Earth Space Force. You are attacking innocent civilians in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Threxmach had never heard of Earth or the United Earth Space Force. According to every database in the Vorthak Empire, there were no unknown civilizations in this region of space capable of fielding a fleet. "Earth," he said aloud, "check the databases. Find out what this Earth is." His intelligence officer worked frantically at his station for several minutes before looking up with confusion. "Sir, there are some references to a primitive world called Earth in the Outer Rim. But according to our information, they have no space travel capabilities. They're supposed to be barely out of their Stone Age." Threxmach looked at the 30 advanced warships surrounding his fleet and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "They're bluffing," he announced. "Probably pirates using stolen ships and fake identification. Open fire on the nearest target." The first Vorthak plasma beam struck the UES Busan exactly where Captain Jae-sung had expected it would. His ship's armor, made from advanced materials that Earth scientists had developed over decades, absorbed the energy blast without even scratching the surface. The Vorthak weapons that could destroy most galactic ships barely left a mark on human hulls. "Well," Jae-sung said calmly to his crew, "I guess they want to do this the hard way." Captain Yoon-ji watched the tactical display as more Vorthak ships opened fire on the human fleet. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up the space between the two forces, but the alien weapons were having almost no effect on human ships. Earth's engineers had studied galactic warfare for 2 centuries, and they had built their vessels to survive anything the galaxy could throw at them. "All ships," Yoon-ji announced, "return fire. Show them what real weapons look like." The human response was unlike anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Instead of energy beams, the Earth ships fired solid projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic railguns. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, slammed into Vorthak. Shields with the force of meteors. The alien energy barriers, designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, were useless against kinetic weapons traveling at such enormous velocities. The first Vorthak destroyer died in seconds. A railgun projectile from the UES Seoul punched straight through its shields and hull, causing a massive explosion that lit up the surrounding space. The ship broke apart like a toy hit by a hammer, scattering debris across thousands of kilometers. "Impossible!" Threxmok shouted as he watched one of his destroyers vanish from the tactical display. "Their weapons went right through our shields." His tactical officer was staring at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, they're using kinetic projectiles instead of energy weapons. Our shields aren't designed to stop solid objects moving at those speeds." 2 more Vorthak ships exploded as human railguns found their targets. The aliens tried to return fire, but their plasma cannons couldn't penetrate human armor, and their ships were too slow to escape the incredibly accurate Earth targeting systems. On the UES Incheon, Commander Byung-ho was coordinating the fleet's attack patterns. His computers had analyzed the Vorthak formation and identified the optimal targets for maximum damage. "Focus fire on their heavy cruisers," he ordered. "Take out their command ships first." Captain Minho of the UES Daegu had a different kind of weapon ready. While his ship's railguns were charging for another shot, he prepared something that would shock the galaxy: a nuclear torpedo. Humans were the only species that had ever thought to use atomic weapons in space combat. Other civilizations considered nuclear fire too dangerous and unpredictable for warfare between ships. The Vorthak were about to learn why humans disagreed. "Nuclear torpedo away," Minho announced as his ship fired a single missile toward the Vorthak flagship. The torpedo was small compared to the massive alien vessel, but it carried enough destructive power to level an entire city. Threxmok watched the strange missile approach his ship on the main screen. It didn't look like any weapon he had seen before. No energy signature, no plasma trail, just a small metal object flying through space. His point defense systems fired at it, but the torpedo was designed to survive such attacks. "What kind of primitive weapon is that?" he asked his tactical officer. He got his answer when the torpedo detonated. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a small star being born. The blast wave hit the Vorthak flagship's shields with unimaginable force, overloading every energy barrier and sending shock waves through the ship's hull. Emergency lights flashed throughout the vessel as systems failed and crew members were thrown to the floor. "By the void," Threxmok whispered as he picked himself up from the deck. "What manner of savages use atomic fire in space?" His shields were down to 30%, his engines were damaged, and half his weapons were offline. Around him, his remaining ships were trying to regroup, but the human fleet was already moving to new attack positions. The Earth ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything in the Vorthak Navy, and their tactics were far more sophisticated. Captain Yoon-ji smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fleet's formation collapse. "All ships, begin attack pattern Delta. Don't let any of them escape." The human fleet split into smaller groups that attacked the Vorthak ships from multiple directions simultaneously. Earth's tactical doctrine emphasized speed, precision and overwhelming firepower concentrated at the enemy's weakest points. The Vorthak, trained to fight against panicked refugees and poorly armed colonies, had no answer for professional military tactics. On the UES Seoul, Captain Hana prepared her Marines for boarding operations. Some of the Vorthak ships were too damaged to fight, but not destroyed enough to prevent their crews from escaping. Human soldiers would make sure that the aliens who had terrorized innocent civilians would face justice for their crimes. Boarding. "Shuttles are ready, Captain," reported Major Kyung-ho, the Marine commander. "My people are armed for Vorthak physiology and trained in their ship layouts. We'll have prisoners for interrogation within the hour." Captain Woo Jin was having an easier time. His electronic warfare systems had completely taken over the Vorthak communication network, and he was broadcasting surrender demands directly to every alien ship. Some of the enemy captains were already trying to contact their fleet commander to ask for instructions, but Threxmok was too busy trying to save his own ship to respond. "Sir," the Vorthak sensor officer called out from his damaged station. "We've lost 17 ships. The remaining vessels are scattered and taking heavy damage. Request permission to withdraw." Threxmok looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before: defeat. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful when attacking defenseless refugees, was being destroyed by an enemy he had never heard of. These humans, whoever they were, fought with a skill and ferocity that surpassed even the legendary Zenthari warriors. "Order all ships to retreat," he commanded. "Emergency jump to the rally point." But before his ships could escape, a new voice filled the bridge. This time it came from Admiral Jin-Ho Park himself, broadcasting from Luna Station. "Attention, Vorthak. Fleet. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Space Force. You have attacked innocent civilians and enslaved free peoples across 17 star systems. Your empire's crimes end today. Surrender immediately or share the fate of your companions." On his main screen, Threxmok could see that more than half his fleet was either destroyed or crippled. The human ships showed no damage at all and were moving to block all escape routes. For the first time in his military career, the Vorthak commander realized he was completely outmatched. "Sir?" his communication officer asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Threxmok looked around his damaged bridge at the crew members who were staring at him with fear in their eyes. These were soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds without ever facing serious resistance. Now they had encountered an enemy that fought back, and they didn't know how to handle it. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Threxmok said slowly. Tell them the Vorthak fleet surrenders." For the first time in their empire's history, the Vorthak had been forced to surrender to an enemy. But as Threxmok would soon learn, defeat was only the beginning. The humans had plans for the Vorthak Empire that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. On the planet below, Hyun-woo was monitoring his damaged communication equipment when it suddenly came, alive with new signals. The Vorthak fleet was broadcasting surrender messages, and strange new voices were speaking in languages he didn't recognize. "Mi Young," he called out excitedly. "Something's happening up there. The Vorthak ships have stopped bombing us." Mi Young rushed to the communication station and listened to the chaotic mix of alien voices. Somewhere in the confusion, she heard a calm, professional voice speaking in perfect universal standard. "This is the United Earth Space Force. The civilians on Kepler 442b are now under our protection." "Earth?" Mi Young thought back to old Zen's comment about humans looking like her people. Could it be possible that the primitive species from the Outer Rim had somehow come to save them? She was about to find out. Mi Young couldn't believe what she was seeing through the bunker's periscope. The sky above Kepler 442b, which had been filled with Vorthak warships for 3 months, now showed strange new vessels descending through the atmosphere. These ships were different from anything she had ever seen. Sleek, angular, and moving with a grace that made them look almost alive. "Are those the ships that defeated the Vorthak?" asked Kato, pressing close to the periscope to get a better look. "I think so," Mi-young replied, though she was having trouble processing what had happened. According to the radio signals they had intercepted, an unknown fleet had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed most of the Vorthak forces in less than 2 hours. The survivors had surrendered, something that had never happened in the Vorthak Empire's long history of conquest. The first ship to land was larger than the others, touching down in the open area that had once been the colony's main market square. Its hull was a dark metallic color that seemed to absorb light, and there were no visible weapons or engines, though it had obviously traveled through space. As Mi-young watched, a ramp extended from the ship's side, and figures in armored suits began walking down it. "They're coming out," she announced to the other colonists who were gathered around the bunker's entrance. "Everyone stay calm. We don't know who they are or what they want." The first figure to emerge from the ship was clearly the leader. His armor was more elaborate than the others, with gold markings that probably indicated rank. He was tall and moved with the confident stride of someone used to command. Behind him came what looked like medics carrying equipment, engineers with scanning devices, and several people whose armor suggested they were translators or diplomats. Colonel Junho Han removed his helmet as he reached the bottom of the ramp, revealing a human face that looked remarkably similar to the Corvani colonists. He had dark hair, brown eyes, and features that could have belonged to any of a dozen species in the galactic community. But there was something different about his bearing, a sense of confidence and competence that came from belonging to a civilization that had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. "Attention colonists of Kepler 442b, he announced, his voice amplified by speakers in his armor. "You are safe now. I am Colonel Han of the Earth Defense Forces. We received your message." Mi-young was the first to emerge from the bunker, followed slowly by other colonists who had spent months hiding underground. They moved carefully, still not quite believing that the nightmare was over. As they gathered in the market square, more ships landed around the colony, disgorging medical teams and engineers who immediately began setting up equipment. "Earth?" Mi-young asked as she approached Colonel Han. "But our databases say Earth is a primitive world with no space travel." Colonel Han smiled. "Earth has many secrets. We've been watching the galaxy for quite some time, waiting for the right moment to introduce ourselves." Dr. Yejin, the mission's chief translator, stepped forward. Her neural implants allowed her to process dozens of alien languages simultaneously, and she had been studying the colonists' communications during the descent. "We know you've been through a terrible experience," she said gently. "Our medical teams are here to help anyone who needs treatment, and our engineers will repair the damage to your colony." Hyunwoo approached the group, still carrying the damaged communication device he had used to send their plea for help. "You really came because of our message?" "Every distress call deserves an answer," Colonel Han replied. "Earth believes that no one should suffer while others have the power to help." As the humans began their work, Mi-young found herself amazed by their efficiency and organization. Medical teams led by Dr. Haijin and Dr. Kyung-ho quickly identified the colonists who needed immediate treatment and began setting up a field hospital. Engineers under the direction of Su-young and Daijung started repairing the colony's power grid and water systems. Everything was done with a level of professionalism that suggested these people had trained for exactly this kind of operation. "How did you defeat the Vorthak so easily?" asked old Zen, who had lived through several wars and understood military matters better than most of the other colonists. Colonel Han's expression became more serious. "The Vorthak are used to fighting defenseless targets. They've never faced an enemy that could fight back effectively. Earth has been preparing for this day for a very long time." As the hours passed, more human ships arrived carrying supplies, equipment, and personnel. The colonists learned that Earth's rescue fleet included not just military vessels, but also hospital ships, engineering support craft, and even ships carrying food and clothing to replace what had been destroyed during the siege. Captain Yun Ji, arrived on the planet's surface in the evening, bringing with her a dozen captured Vorthak officers who would be tried for war crimes. The sight of the defeated aliens in restraints sent a wave of emotional relief through the colonist population. These were the beings who had terrorized them for months, and now they were prisoners. "What will happen to them?" Mi Young asked. "They'll be given fair trials according to galactic law," Captain Yunji replied. "Earth believes in justice, not revenge, but they will answer for their crimes against innocent people." As night fell over Kepler 442b, the colonists found themselves experiencing something they hadn't felt in months: hope. The human rescue teams had restored power to most of the colony. Medical treatment was available for everyone who needed it, and there were Earth patrol ships in orbit ensuring that no one would ever attack them again. Hyun Woo sat with Mi Young and several other colonists around a campfire that the humans had helped them build. Above them, the alien stars looked different somehow, less threatening, more welcoming. The galaxy suddenly seemed like a safer place. "I still can't believe it," Hyun Woo said. "After all the major powers ignored us, help came from a species that most people thought was primitive." Dr. Ye Jin, who had joined their group, overheard the comment. "Earth learned long ago that true strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the largest territory. It's about using your power to protect those who can't protect themselves." "What happens now?" Mi Young asked. "Will Earth take over our colony?" "No," Dr. Ye Jin replied firmly. "Kepler 442b belongs to its people. Earth will help you rebuild and ensure your safety, but this is your world. We're not conquerors." Colonel Han approached their group, having finished his discussions with the other human commanders. "Admiral, Park has authorized me to offer Kepler 442b protection under Earth's new protection doctrine. Any world that requests our help will receive it, regardless of their size or strategic value." "Protection doctrine?" Mi Young asked. "Earth's official policy regarding the galaxy," Colonel Han explained. "We believe that every species has the right to exist free from oppression. When someone threatens that freedom, Earth will respond." Old Zen, who had been quiet for most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "In all my years, I have seen many empires rise and fall. They all claimed to be different, but they all eventually became what they once fought against. How do we know Earth won't follow the same path?" Colonel Han was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "You don't," he said finally. "All we can do is show you through our actions that we mean what we say. Time will prove whether Earth can be trusted." As the humans continued their work, throughout the night, word of the rescue operation was spreading across the galaxy. Communication networks carried the news that an unknown species called humanity had appeared from nowhere and humiliated the mighty Vorthak Empire. Governments throughout known space were trying to figure out who these humans were, where they had come from, and what they wanted. On distant worlds, slaves working in Vorthak mines heard whispered rumors that someone had finally stood up to their oppressors. In the halls of the Galactic Council, ambassadors demanded emergency sessions to discuss the human problem. The major empires began frantically searching their databases for any information about Earth. But on Kepler 442b, none of that mattered. What mattered was that people who had expected to die were now safe. Children who had been hiding in bunkers for months were playing in the rebuilt town square. Families were reunited, the wounded were healing, and hope had been restored. Mi Young stood at the edge of the colony as dawn approached, watching human and alien engineers working together to rebuild what the Vorthak had destroyed. In the distance, she could see the sleek forms of Earth patrol ships maintaining their protective orbit. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that the future might be bright. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the circular chamber, their voices raised in anger, fear, and confusion. Translators worked frantically to keep up. with the dozens of languages being spoken simultaneously, while security officers tried to maintain order among delegates who seemed ready to start fighting each other. At the center of it all stood Admiral Jin-Ho Park, wearing the blue uniform of the United Earth Space Force. Beside him were Dr. So-Ra Kim, Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, and Captain Chang-Min Lee, whose job was to keep the Admiral safe in what was clearly a hostile environment. "Honorable delegates," Admiral Park said, his voice calm and clear despite the chaos around him. "Earth comes in peace. We seek trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense against those who prey upon the innocent." The Zenthari ambassador, a tall reptilian creature named Escathor, slammed his clawed hand on his speaking platform. "Your species appeared from nowhere and destroyed an entire Vorthak fleet. How do we know you're not planning to conquer us all?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Altarian representative nodded vigorously, while the delegate from the Corvan Federation whispered urgently to his advisors. Everyone in the chamber was thinking the same thing. If humans could defeat the Vorthak so easily, what else were they capable of? Dr. So-Ra stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident in every gesture. "Ambassador Scathor, if Earth were a conquering empire, we would have revealed ourselves centuries ago when we first achieved faster-than-light travel. Instead, we watched, learned, and waited until someone needed our help. Waited and spied. On us, you mean?" accused the Veclan representative, whose insect-like features made his anger look particularly fierce. "How long have you been watching? What else do you know about our civilizations?" Admiral Park remained calm. "Earth has been observing galactic civilization for approximately 2 centuries. We've learned your languages, studied your cultures, and monitored your conflicts. We did this not to exploit you, but to understand you." The questions came rapidly after that. How many ships did Earth have? What was their population? Where exactly was their homeworld? Why had they hidden for so long? Admiral Park answered what he could while carefully avoiding information that might compromise Earth's security. "The galaxy has been trapped in the same cycles for millennia," Admiral Park continued when the immediate questions died down. "Empires rise and fall, but the strong continue to prey upon the weak. Earth offers a different path. We believe that any species, no matter how small, deserves the right to exist free from oppression." Behind closed doors, the real negotiations were taking place. Every major power in the galaxy was desperately trying to understand what humanity represented and how it would affect the balance of power. The Zenthari Empire offered military alliances, the Altarian Federation proposed trade agreements, and smaller civilizations begged for protection from their larger neighbors. But Earth's response was always the same. They would defend any world that asked for help. They would trade with anyone who offered fair terms, and they would ally with any civilization that shared their values of freedom and justice. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the galaxy had been transformed. The mere existence of Earth's protection doctrine had changed everything. Smaller, civilizations that had lived in fear for generations suddenly had hope. Aggressive empires found themselves facing the possibility of human intervention if they attacked defenseless targets. The Vorthak Empire was the first to experience this new reality. After losing their fleet at Kepler 442b, they had tried to rebuild their forces and attack another refugee colony. Earth's response had been swift and devastating. A single human ship had appeared in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld and delivered an ultimatum. Free all slaves immediately, or face the consequences. When the Vorthak refused, Earth had demonstrated what their weapons could do by destroying an uninhabited moon. The psychological effect was immediate and complete. Within days, the Vorthak Empire had agreed to release all slaves and pay reparations to their victims. On Kepler 442b, Mi Young stood in the rebuilt town square, watching human and alien children playing together. The colony had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy, proof that different species could live together in peace when protected from those who would exploit them. Hyunwoo approached her, carrying a data pad with the latest news from across known space. "The humans have established defensive pacts with 47 worlds in just 6 months," he reported, "and 12 major corporations have signed trade agreements with Earth companies." Mi-young smiled as she watched a human engineer teaching alien children how to build simple robots. The scene would have been impossible before Earth's arrival. Different species working together, learning from each other, free from the fear of conquest or enslavement. "They really meant it," she said quietly. "When they said they came to help, they weren't lying." The changes weren't limited to small colonies like Kepler 442b. On Zenthar Prime, the capital of the Zenthari Empire, military leaders were completely revising their strategic doctrines. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that surpassed even the most advanced Zenthari technology, and they had done it while maintaining perfect military discipline and showing mercy to defeated enemies. General Krexhan, Supreme Commander of the Zenthari military, studied reports of human tactics with professional admiration and personal concern. "They fight like no species we have ever encountered," he told his staff. "Their technology is superior, their strategies are flawless, and their soldiers show courage that rivals our own warriors. But what concerns me most is their restraint." "Sir?" asked one of his subordinates. "They could have conquered half the galaxy by now," General Krexhan explained. "Instead, they use their power only to protect others. This makes them either the most honorable species in known space or the most dangerous, possibly both." The Galactic Council had been forced to create an entirely new classification for Earth: Protector Civilization. It was a category that had never existed before because no species had ever used their military superiority primarily to defend others rather than expand their own territory. Dr. Sora was now Earth's permanent ambassador to the Council, working to establish formal, diplomatic relations with dozens of civilizations. Her office received hundreds of requests for protection every day, from small colonies threatened by pirates to entire species facing extinction from aggressive neighbors. "We can't save everyone," she told Admiral Park during one of their regular conferences. "Earth is powerful, but we're not omnipotent. We need to choose our interventions carefully." "I know," Admiral Park replied, "but we can save enough to make a difference. Every world we protect, every species we help, creates a ripple effect. Others see that it's possible to stand up to bullies and tyrants." The most dramatic example of this ripple effect came from an unexpected source: the Vorthak themselves. After their empire collapsed, many former Vorthak slaves had taken control of their home worlds and were now seeking to join Earth's protection network. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species that had once terrorized the galaxy was now asking humanity for help. On the bridge of the UES Incheon, Captain Yoonji reviewed reports from across human space. Earth's fleet had grown from 30 ships to over 200 as new vessels rolled out of expanded shipyards. But more importantly, they were no longer alone. Several alien civilizations had begun developing their own protection fleets, inspired by Earth's example. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Yujin from the communication station, "we're receiving a distress call from the Antares system. Pirates are attacking a trade convoy." Captain Yunji smiled. "Set course for Antares, maximum speed." As the Incheon jumped to faster-than-light speed, its crew prepared for another rescue mission. It had become routine for Earth ships to respond to calls for help across the galaxy. What had started as a single rescue operation on Kepler 442b had grown into a galaxy-wide commitment to protecting the innocent. Back on Kepler 442b, Old Zen sat with a group of young colonists who had been born after the Vorthak siege ended. They had never known fear, never hidden in bunkers, never wondered if help would come. To them, the galaxy was a safe place where different species worked together and helped each other. "Tell us about the old days," one of the children asked. before the humans came. Zen looked up at the sky where Earth patrol ships maintained their eternal watch. In the old days, he said slowly, the strong preyed upon the weak, and no one believed that could ever change. We thought that was just the way the galaxy worked. What changed? Asked another child. Zen smiled as he remembered that desperate night when Hyanwu had sent their plea for help into the darkness of space. Someone heard our cry for help, he said, and they came. Above them, the stars looked down on a galaxy that was slowly but surely becoming a better place. It would take time, perhaps generations, but the seeds of change had been planted. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other desperate voices were calling for help. And somewhere else, Earth ships were already on their way to answer those calls. The galaxy had learned an important lesson.